Yeah, man. So I was thinking about this whole the Black History Month and all that, and all the conversation going on around it, and you know, kind of people taking it out of the schools and all that, and you know, I was thinking about you and I when we started our Black History journey, so to speak. I mean, there was no Black history in school that we knew of. I mean, you went to a PWI, I went to Houston Citizen to begin with, but then I went to a PWI. We just kind of learned Black history on our own. We just, for whatever reason, you took it upon you. You found something. I read the autobiography of Malcolm X, but you hit me too. I read that book, and from that point on, I was just engulfed. And you know, like we always like to say, of all subjects, history is best qualified to reward our research. Brother Malcolm X said that, but I just found it so fascinating to learn about our people when it came to Black history. I just don't understand where all the conversation about taking it out of schools. I mean, we never learned it in school. I mean, I didn't know what you thought about
Yeah. How you gonna take out what's not there?
that.
I
It's
mean,
true.
I know, we both have young daughters my daughter just recently finished high school. She's a freshman at Howard now. And of course, my niece Yasmin is on her way to, we'll leave it as a mystery, but she's graduating. She's graduating in May. I'll let you share that if you want to share it. We'll be down for her graduation, Keisha and I. But I don't know if she learned any Black history at her high school. Keisha certainly didn't. She certainly didn't. As a matter of fact, she wrote an essay uh, last Black History Month, and one of the things she wrote in her essay was, "My father wanted to make sure that I knew not to be one of these folks out here complaining about the fact that they gave us the shortest month." I said, "Do not put that. Do not say that." Right?
Mhm.
Carter G. Woodson created Negro History Week.
Right.
And he chose February for his reasons. I know one of them had to do with Lincoln, and the other had to do with Frederick Douglass, if I'm not mistaken. Which of course, we learned that many years ago, educating ourselves on Black history. But if you recall, bro, when we were in college, I was one of those people who thought Black folks didn't have any history
Right.
because I had never studied it or seen it anywhere.
I remember you
And
actually said
I remember, that's why I'm a little bit, I don't just slice and dice like I used to. But I
that.
remember, bro, even when I was at Trinity, and I told this story recently, I majored in computer science because I wanted to make money, but I never had a real love for computer science. But when I took classes at Trinity, there was a history course that I took.
Mhm.
And of course, history was whitewashed. I took a history course at Trinity. There was no mention of Black people as far as I can remember.
Right.
But
Right.
I remember even being excited about learning about, oh, this is what happened. This is how things came to be. It was American history. And I don't even remember. I know we took it in high school as well. But
Mhm.
something about taking that in college sparked my mind about history. And then, of course, you coupled that with Malcolm. Malcolm was the one that we credit with waking us up to this whole concept of, wait a minute, some things happened, namely chattel slavery. You gotta say chattel
Mhm.
slavery for the white folks who are always like, there was slavery all over the world,
Slavery all
not
over the world.
chattel
Nah,
slavery,
there
not
was
chattel slavery.
nobody endured slavery
Uh,
the way our people endured it.
so that was part of couple of those together, and then of course that put us on our journey to that we're still on.
Still
Right,
on.
I'm reading a book right now, bro. I don't know if I've shared it with you already, but about the Black history of Seattle.
Mhm.
Fascinating,
Yeah, you
fascinating.
told me about that. We talked the other day about that, and we started talking about this whole thing about using words and not understanding what the words meant. And we had a close personal friend who told both of us, man, yeah, when I was out in the world, I didn't know what I was doing. And I was on Skid Row. And that whole thing got us, you and I, talking about what exactly does Skid Row mean? And I'm gonna let you explain that. But it's like, and what exactly does Skid Row mean? We always thought it meant, you were down and out, down on your luck and all that kind of stuff. But actually, that's not really the definition of Skid Row.
No, and that was in the book I'm reading right now. It's called The Forging of a Black Community by Quintard Taylor. And he gives the Black history of Seattle. And it's very interesting. And the term Skid Row originated in early Seattle, the settlers, the pioneers, when they created the logging industry. They would cut the logs down in one part of the city, which was higher up, and they would slid or skid the logs down to the waterfront where they shipped them off to be sold. And so that term Skid Row became a term that was associated with workers who were transient because they would come in for the logging season. They were in the city for that period of time, and then they left the city after logging season. So they were temporary or transient. And so that term has found its way all throughout the country to mean transient residents, which we associate now with people who are homeless or folks who are nomadic or whatever the case may be, but we don't use it in terms now to have nothing to do with logging. And, and going back to your original point about them removing Black history from schools, one of the things I'm giving a talk, I'm going to be part of a panel next week. And one of the things that I want to see us move forward with as far as Black history is concerned is to move beyond these people contributed to the greatness of America. Yeah, we know we contribute to I guess not everybody knows that, but I'm more concerned with the history, the way that Malcolm taught it. Right. And even I saw a recent remark by Dr. King talking about the Homestead Act. Let's get into this history of how things came to be. Tell us the story of Black people in America. And that story is not just what we contributed and what we invented, is how we got to be in this second-class citizenship and how it has been maintained throughout the history of this country. That's the Black history, so that folks can stop looking down upon Black people as if something is wrong with us. Well, saying this nonsense, this bullshit about, oh, my folks came here with nothing and they worked hard and lifted themselves up by their bootstraps. Yeah, they came here with nothing, but as soon as they got here, America gave them something. Right. We call it land.
Right. I don't know if you remember Dr. King gave a brilliant talk, gave a brilliant response. It wasn't even in a speech. It was a response to a question someone asked him about that very thing. He said, Dr. King said, you talk about us pulling ourselves up by our bootstraps. He said, it's kind of difficult to tell a bootless man to pull himself up by his bootstrap when he don't even have any boots on. He said, but America was willing to give her, even Native Americans. America was willing to give your European ancestors. You were willing to give them land and food and all this other kind of stuff to get started. What Dr. King called it, said you were willing to give them an economic base in which to start and get their start in this country. He said, but the Black man and Black woman, you weren't willing to give us anything at all. You told us to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps when we didn't have any boots to pull up by at all. But somehow, some way, we did it anyway. And so we've always been, kind of in this position where we have to just take care of ourselves and do things for ourselves. And I guess, I think about what's going on in politics today and people losing their jobs and, companies having to fold and DEI and all that kind of stuff. And, I just thought about the whole DEI thing. Like, it never benefited me as a Black man. It never. There's never been a program in my 25 years in education. There's never been a program that benefited me, Dr. Diop, directly because of my race. Now, it's done the opposite. I've not gotten opportunities because of that, but I've never been benefited off anything that's come down the pike as it relates to DEI or anything like that.
And of course, I certainly haven't, but I got to go back to the bootstrap conversation, bro. It's called the Homestead Act. Right? It was an actual law where they gave these peasants who came from all over Europe, you're willing to give them land, going back to Dr. King. These are newcomers. These are folks who just set foot on the continent, whereas your ex-slaves who you've been working and getting labor from for free, who've already contributed to the country, you can't find your way to give them attractive land, but you can give those who just got here because of their whiteness, you can give them land right away. Then their descendants have the audacity and the gall. Well, I won't even say audacity and gall. They make these statements out of their ignorance of history, right? Now, we will refer to that as Black history, but it's really just history, right? When we say Black history, what we're doing is inserting ourselves into the story where we've been taken out, right? How could there be any TV show, movie, book written, anything, and you're reading it or watching it, and you don't see a Black person, and we've been here basically from the beginning? So we know that when that's being done, you've whitewashed us out of the story. As we continue to study history, we find out and uncover it. We find where we fit into this story, and it changes the story. It's like, I'll say this, and I'll give it back to you. When they talk about the NFL Hall of Fame, they say one of the criteria for a Hall of Fame is, can you tell the story of the NFL without mentioning this person? If you can, then they're not a Hall of Famer. Well, you can't tell the story of the NFL without mentioning Jerry Rice or Emmitt Smith or Michael Irvin or Troy Aikman or Tom Brady. You can't tell that story, same as you can't tell the story of America without mentioning Black people. It's an incomplete story. It doesn't make sense, right? It has holes in it. And when you start digging into those questions, the answer to those questions is usually Black people.
Right, exactly. I'm telling you, man, and there's just so so much to it that, you know, it's a shame that we don't have our own class. The Alhaven group have our own class. You ever thought about creating a Black History class? That'd be kind of dope.
Oh yeah, bro, for sure. Especially as you may have heard people say here recently, you know, opportunity emerges out of chaos.
Right.
And right now we're in a moment of chaos. And okay, you want to say you don't want to teach DEI, you don't want to teach Black history. Maybe it's time we take that upon ourselves. We're certainly qualified to do it. Maybe it's time for us to do that. And we also have the technology. It doesn't matter that you're in Texas, I'm in Washington. Our students can be in Nigeria, they can be in Africa, they can be in England, they can be in Alabama, right? We can certainly do that. And we probably should, right? As they're continuing to, and we probably would have even white folks who are righteous and want to learn the truth. That's the way I refer to, you know, they'll say, well, this didn't happen, that didn't happen. Well, is what you're saying true or not? Is what you're saying true or not? You can't make up history.
You can't, exactly. And going back to that quote, of all subjects, history is best qualified to reward our research, by Malcolm X. We often talked about when I say we talk about, I mean, we've been talking about our role in Black history and just kind of our sojourn in Black history for 30, 40 years, long before it became popular to do so. We were doing that. And we've always talked about going back and visiting our motherland. I know you were married in Africa some years. In what were you, South Africa? Where were you married?
Yeah, Zimbabwe.
So, and then you recently went back to Nigeria. So I wanted to ask you, kind of, when you were married in Zimbabwe, I mean, however many years ago, and now going back when you went to Nigeria, kind of compare your mental experiences from when you got married there and then when you went back a few months ago.
Oh, well, the experiences themselves were night and day, but my mentality was the same. I still felt like when I went to South Africa, went to Zimbabwe, we were married in Victoria Falls, I still felt like I was going home. It's still Africa, you know what I mean? The experience was different because it looked like San Francisco. And I was there to get married.
Nigeria?
Zimbabwe, Cape Town. So I went to Cape Town, went to Johannesburg, we were married in Victoria Falls, Zimbabwe, and then we went to Mozambique. But my mind frame was different because I was there with other people. I was there for a festive occasion. I wasn't really in the mood,
learning kind of mood.
Yeah. I wasn't doing that. So cut fade. We go back in December with Nigeria. Went out there, you know, like I say, our trip was 3-pronged. I call it my 3 Ps: philanthropy, pleasure, and partnership. So we did some business stuff, we did some philanthropy, and we did some pleasurable things. And so I was there in scholastic mode, paying attention to everything. Everything was curriculum, the entire trip and how they treat people. For example, you know, when I flew back, it was Delta Airlines, but you wouldn't have recognized it as that Delta Airlines because the standard that you're used to with Delta Airlines, that was not the standard they had in Nigeria. It didn't look like Delta Airlines. So, you know, even though it's Delta, they don't seem to have the same sort of concern about how they represent themselves in Nigeria. But it was a fascinating trip. I learned a lot, met a lot of people, made a lot of friends, looked at what it would take to set up a Nigeria Lagos office of the Alhaven Group. It was a spiritual kind of reunion or coming home, if you will, on that trip. And being able to walk around, I think I shared this with you before, and just all you see is Black people, bro. I cannot, when I talk about Nigeria, whoever I'm telling about that, that's the phrase that I use, because I don't give a damn what they think about it. I know it makes some people uncomfortable, but imagine being Black people in America for your entire life, and you've never been somewhere where it's all Black people. You've never, right? And that was my number one takeaway, that everybody on TV, everybody in the Uber, everybody at the hotel, people working there, people cooking, people going to work, people walking down the street. Wherever I went, I saw Black people, all classes of Black people, but Black people. It was a learning experience in and of itself. And I'm looking forward to going back to Lagos December 2025. We'll start planning that journey in May.
Yeah, that's gonna be, you know, I plan to be on that one. So we got to do something while we're over there, something, you know, kind of do a podcast, do a show. We got to do something while we're over there, man. You know, just and thinking about this whole this journey of just kind of traveling and when I think about just being around Black people, like you said, I started, when you started talking about that, I thought about that. I said, you know what? Like, when have we ever in the United States of America ever just been around all Black people? I can think about the Million Man March. I mean, that was epic. You know, if you recall, our cab driver, if you remember, this was before Lyft and Uber, but our cab driver was a brother. The dude on the train was a brother. Everybody was black. It was a great thing. When we used to go to the Essence Festival every year. I mean, all black people. But those things, those moments are so fleeting. We just kind of get in there and just, can you imagine, as black people living, breathing, and seeing nothing but black people all day, every day, which is what other races experience all the time. In the part of Texas I live in, is mainly Hispanic. So you go to the grocery store, you go to work, you go to school, you go to City Hall, wherever you go, it's dominated by one culture. And for us, I guess we'd have to go somewhere like Atlanta or DC or Chicago, somewhere like that, to experience that kind of cultural renaissance. And you said when we go to Africa, you experience it all the time. It's the norm.
Bro, the word that I associated with it was comfortable. I was not worried about what somebody else thought about me because I was in a room and I was black, right? You talk about the Million Man March, Atlanta, places like that. Yeah, you could be surrounded by black people in the Million Man March for a moment. The minute you come out of that march, you right back to worrying about race and not being comfortable, wondering what they're thinking about me and how do I need to fit in? How should I act? What's acceptable? I saw a comedian say, "Turn down your blackness dial." Right. We walk into a situation, we assess it, and we adjust our black accordingly.
Right. We do.
Right.
We do.
So when I was in Nigeria, there was no adjustment. That black dial was on 10 the whole time. Right. And I'm not worried about what you think about it. The way that some of these folks are complaining and criticizing the blackness of Kendrick Lamar's performance at the halftime of the Super Bowl is a primary example of it. Right. His blackness was on 10, and that's why he's getting all this hate and criticism and negative commentary about his performance. But when I was in Nigeria, I didn't have to worry about that. I just felt this feeling of like peace and calm. Just everywhere I looked, black.
Yeah, you were at home. It's wild when you. I like that you said comfortable. I'm like, I just feel like I'm at home, and that whole blackness dial you talked about. That's not something that we went to Saturday cultural classes to learn. It's just kind of as black folks, we just learn being out of our element, being uncomfortable. I'm gonna use that word, being uncomfortable when we go to work, when we go to school, when we go to the grocery store. Everywhere we go, we're uncomfortable. So we always have to adjust our black dial accordingly. So nobody taught us that. It's just something that we just kind of learned. I was telling you, I interviewed for a position here in San Antonio a couple of years ago, and in a school district. And I went through all the interviews and did all I was supposed to do, and I was recommended to be hired to the superintendent. So the team I interviewed with, and the Hispanic, the superintendent was a Hispanic dude, and I went up to his office and he said, you were recommended, and everything, the team loved you. He said, but I have to this is the superintendent, he said, I have to make sure you fit into our culture. And when he told me that, I looked at him and I said, well, I don't know what school I would go to fit into somebody's culture. I have all the education, everything you could possibly want to experience. But now I'm getting ready to be judged on something I have no control over.
Exactly.
Your culture. And so I began to think, well, what culture do you have that I don't fit in? This is an educational institution. This is a K-12 institution. I've done everything in K-12. What about me doesn't fit into your culture? And the only thing that didn't fit into this particular culture is I wasn't like him. So I didn't adjust my black meter, which I didn't know I was supposed to, because, I'm here to interview for the job. Of course, I didn't get that job, but that stuck with me for so long. It still sticks with me to this day, how when you go in to interview or do whatever, you have to so-called adjust that black dial you talked about.
Yeah, bro. And some black folks, they just took a sledgehammer and they just crushed their dial, right?
It's a damn a dial.
It's 100%. It's always on -1.
Right. Exactly.
If it's not on -1, they ain't getting the job. So they know that. So our problem is we go from 10 to 8.
So so let me get the numbers right. 10 is extremely black and 1 is not black.
10 is Kendrick Lamar. 10 is Kendrick Lamar.
And 1 goes down to the Key and Peele skits when they're acting white and all that stuff.
-1 is like, well, Clarence Thomas is -100. He -100.
Who?
I say -1 is somebody like, let me see. They're just not trying to identify with like the brother that was the They're trying to shy away from blackness. The football coach, where he said, "I'm not a black. I'm just a coach. I don't want to be seen as black." Okay, bro.
Yeah, exactly.
You turn the dial all the way down. You at 0. We can see that you're black, but you don't want to acknowledge that. You don't want any association with it. And let me tell you this, bro, before we get off of here. It's the saddest thing ever to have somebody, again, he's trying to make others feel comfortable, right? You're a black man achieving you in the gauntlet of white supremacy. You've risen to the highest level in your career and in your profession. And you've been brainwashed to think it's to your benefit to distance yourself from the blackness, right? It's like blackness is great. Blackness is a great thing to be. It's one of the best things to be. We have one of the longest histories and cultures and heritages on the planet. Why would you want to deny that? It's because of all of this, what I said about you're swimming in this white supremacy all the time. And you've learned that if I put that dial on -1 or 0, I got a better chances of getting to where I want to go. And I'm at the age, bro, damn that.
I mean, we're both there. It's like, well, you know, whatever happens, this is how it's going to be. But I'm going to let you go, Dr. Dupè. You is kind of end of the Diop and Dupè show on our podcast. Make sure you tune in every week or however often we decide to do it. Sometimes we do it every week. Sometimes we do it twice a week. It just depends. So just like, share, and we'll get at you next time. I'll holler at you, brother.
All right, brother. Be cool.